Imagine for a second that you decided to treat your marriage, or I don't know, maybe your closest friendship, like a rigid mathematical formula.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that sounds like a terrible idea.
Right, like you wake up, you check the boxes, you pay exactly 50% of the bills, you avoid active sabotage, and therefore you just declare yourself the perfect partner.
I mean, anyone listening knows that is definitely not how human connection works at all.
No, it's completely absurd. But in today's deep dive, we're looking at an argument that says this is exactly how we have been fundamentally misusing and honestly misunderstanding the word righteousness for centuries.
It really is the default setting for so many of us, though. We tend to treat righteousness as this sterile binary status.
Yeah, like a pass-fail test.
Exactly. You either passed the moral exam or you failed it. You broke the rule or you kept the rule. But when you strip away that modern Western lens...
Which is hard to do.
It is, but when you do, and you actually look at the ancient theological frameworks we're unpacking today, that entire checklist mentality just shatters.
It really does.
You start to realize we've been trying to measure an ocean with a ruler.
Which is exactly our mission for you today. We are exploring a paradigm that completely upends the status quo. It's this idea described in the text as the triune covenantal flow of righteousness.
It's a heavy phrase, but it's brilliant.
It is, and I have to say, before we really get into the weeds here, you sent us an incredible stack of sources to prepare for this.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of material.
There was, but full disclosure, a couple of those links to the highly academic Hebrew and Greek lexicons were aggressively locked behind some very stubborn university paywalls.
Yeah, that happens. Academic publishing can be a fortress.
Right, so we appreciate the ambition, but thankfully, the core analysis you provided was absolute gold. It honestly broke our brains in the best way possible.
I'm glad to hear that.
Because it proves that righteousness isn't a flat, static noun at all. It is this living three-part movement.
Yeah, and that phrase you mentioned, triune covenantal flow, it's such a disruptive concept. Well, because it demands that we stop treating righteousness as an object you achieve, something you just put on a shelf to admire. The ancient mindset frames it as a continuous current.
Like a river.
Exactly like a river. It originates with Jehovah as the spring, it travels through the Messiah as the conduit, and then it ultimately erupts within the believer as living fruit.
Wow.
And the key here is, if you sever any part of that movement, you lose the entire theological architecture.
Right. And to even wrap our heads around how this flow operates, I think we have to talk about the language itself, because English just does a massive disservice to the original words.
Oh, absolutely. Flattening these ancient concepts into our modern definition of just, being good, it causes so much unnecessary confusion.
Okay, let's unpack this. It creates what the source calls a philosophical bottleneck, right?
Yeah. Think about the Hebrew word, tzedakah. In a modern context, if we call someone a righteous person, we usually mean they don't lie, they don't steal.
Maybe they recycle.
Right, they pay their taxes. It's an abstract moral evaluation. But tzedakah is fiercely relational. It implies covenantal faithfulness.
So it's not just about a rule, it's about a person.
Exactly. It asks the question, are you fulfilling your obligations to the relationship you are in?
And then there's the Greek word dikaiosine, which carries a very similar weight.
Yes, very similar.
It's not about passing an arbitrary ethics test floating out in the ether somewhere. It's about possessing the quality of being right in the eyes of God. It's alignment with his character.
Right, it's positional and relational.
So trying to understand these massive relational concepts by just staring at the English word righteousness, it's like trying to comprehend the sheer force of a massive moving river.
By exclusively examining a single cup of water.
Yes, drawn right from the tap. You can analyze that cup of water under a microscope all day long, but you are never going to understand the current.
No, you won't.
You won't see where the water originated or how it completely shapes the landscape it runs through.
And what's fascinating here is that this is the exact trap that causes so many theological arguments today. We isolate the cup of water.
We zoom in too far.
Way too far. We argue over a one-dimensional definition, and we completely miss the relational current. Scripture binds the origin, the conduit, and the result into one seamless ecosystem.
You really cannot separate them without breaking the physics of the text itself.
Precisely.
So let's follow that river all the way back to the glacier, back to the source.
Let's do it.
The foundation of this entire framework is the righteousness of Jehovah. And what immediately stands out in the text is that his righteousness, his tzedakah, is not described as a passive mood.
Right. He isn't just sitting on a mountain merely being righteous.
Right. It is an aggressive, unstoppable determination to set broken things right and to keep his covenant promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Because there is no river without the spring. He is the ultimate standard of the flow. And this is where we run into a massive philosophical tension, which the source points out Paul tackles head-on in Romans 1.1 scene.
Oh, the justice versus mercy dilemma.
Exactly. How does a perfectly just judge deal with human rebellion without just wiping humanity out completely? Because if a judge lets a guilty criminal walk free just because he loves him,
that judge is no longer just. He's corrupt.
Right. But Jehovah's Tzedakah requires him to maintain justice, to deal with the rebellion, while simultaneously keeping his promise to redeem the world.
He has to be both.
Yes, he has to be both the just judge and the justifier of the guilty. He has to accomplish judgment and redemption at the exact same moment.
Which honestly feels like a cosmic impossibility until you look at how the river actually reaches us. The source needs a channel.
Conduit.
Right, and that brings us to the means, which is the righteousness of Messiah. The historical reality laid out in this text is pretty stark.
It is. Where historical Israel continually fractured the covenant, Messiah remained perfectly, flawlessly faithful.
He didn't just drop by to deliver a new syllabus on how to obey the Torah.
No, he is the absolute embodiment of it. He is the righteous one.
Yeah, and Paul summarizes this beautifully in 1 Timothy 3.16, pointing out that Messiah was vindicated by the Spirit.
His perfect covenant obedience is the conduit that actually solves the dilemma of the just judge we were just talking about.
Yeah.
And the mechanism here is crucial. It is by union with him that his perfection becomes our justification.
Okay, wait, hold on. Let me stop you right there for a second.
Sure.
Because this is exactly where the wheels fall off for a lot of people.
Okay, so.
Well, if Jehovah is the infinite source, and the Messiah was the perfect conduit who already perfectly obeyed the law and swam the entire distance for us.
Right.
Doesn't that imply the believer can just sit back and relax?
I see where you're going.
Like, if the conduit is completely secure, why do I have to do anything? Can't I just float on a raft, crack open a beverage, and coast into eternity? The work is done, right?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is probably the most common and frankly the most logical misunderstanding of grace in the modern era.
It makes sense on paper.
It does, but it fundamentally ignores the physics of how a river actually works.
Okay, explain that.
You cannot stand in a rushing current and remain dry. You cannot be united to the source of life and remain dead. The very same gospel that justifies a person that declares them innocent simultaneously sanctifies them.
So grace is not a passive legal fiction.
No, it is an active, invasive force. Grace never leaves a person unchanged.
So it's not a get-out-of-jail-free card you just keep in your wallet while you go back to robbing banks.
Exactly. If you are truly pulled into this covenantal flow, that grace is going to radically alter your nature. It rewires your desires. It transforms the human will itself.
Wow.
And that biochemical change in the soul, so to speak, leads us directly to the third part of this triunity.
Right, the fruit, our righteousness.
Yes.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This answers that exact question of how this divine flow actually manifests in the physical life of the saint. The ancient texts describe this as a spirit-empowered life of obedience.
And the chronological order laid out in the analysis is so helpful for understanding the mechanism here.
Yeah, walk us through that.
It works like this. Faith receives the righteousness.
Okay.
Then the Spirit produces the righteousness. And then finally, human obedience demonstrates the righteousness.
So faith receives, Spirit produces, obedience demonstrates.
Look at the causality there. You don't manufacture it yourself. You receive it. The Spirit begins the internal production, aligning your broken will with Jehovah's perfect will.
Right.
And the inevitable outward result is action. It is fiercely active.
Yeah, John is unapologetically blunt about this in 1 John 3.7. He says, the one who practices righteousness is righteous.
And Paul writes to Timothy, commanding him to actively pursue righteousness.
And this is the incredibly brilliant tightrope these texts are walking. The source is very careful to balance this. They make a massive flashing neon distinction. Your righteous deeds do not purchase your salvation.
Absolutely not.
You are not swiping a credit card of good behavior to buy your way into the covenant. But you also aren't allowed to remain static. The obedience is a fruit.
Yes, and I love that organic imagery.
Right. Like if you super glue a bunch of shiny plastic apples to a dead branch.
You haven't brought the tree back to life.
Exactly. You've just created a really weird lawn ornament. But if a tree is actually alive and its roots are actually drinking from the river, it is going to organically push out real apples.
That organic growth is the ultimate proof of life. Your deeds don't buy your placement in the river, but they absolutely reveal whether you were actually planted by the water or if you're just standing in the desert talking about water.
Yeah, that distinction is everything.
And this three-part framework perfectly unifies all those seemingly contradictory verses in Scripture. You know, the ones that call righteousness a totally free gift.
Right.
And the ones that threaten judgment if you don't pursue righteousness. It harmonizes them completely. They aren't computing theology.
It's one continuous flow.
Operating in three distinct ways. Originating from the Father, secured by the Son, and manifested by the Spirit within the saints.
When you see it as a unified mechanism, all that anxiety of trying to balance faith and works just kind of dissolves.
It really does.
But that does introduce a very practical problem.
Yeah.
If the Spirit is rewiring my desires and I am supposed to be actively pursuing obedience and producing fruit...
What rules are we playing by?
Exactly. How do I know what a healthy apple is supposed to look like?
Which forces us to look at the framework of obedience. Specifically, the Greek terminology used for law that's provided in the source. If we want to understand the shape of the fruit, we have to understand the concept of nomos.
Nomos, being the Greek word that Paul uses to translate the Hebrew concept of Torah, or the law.
Right.
And for a lot of people today, the word law triggers an immediate allergic reaction. We think of it as a suffocating burden, a list of petty restrictions designed to just ruin our fun.
But Paul himself completely rejects that view. In Romans 7.1, he calls the nomos holy, righteous, and good.
So the law itself was never the villain of the story.
No, the tragedy, as Paul argues, is the law of sin and death operating in fragile human flesh. The human inability to keep the law is the problem, not the law itself.
So the gospel doesn't come along and blow up the nomos.
Not at all.
According to Romans 8.4, the gospel provides the Spirit, which actually enables the righteous requirement of the nomos to be fulfilled in us. The Spirit gives us the power to actually live out the beautiful reality that the law was always pointing toward.
And to really grasp the beauty of nomos, this raises an important question. You have to contrast it with its absolute opposite, a terrifying state called animos.
Animos, literally meaning without law or lawless.
Yes. It describes the condition of a soul outside the covenantal order of Jehovah. It is the total rejection of his divine tzedakah.
And our modern culture honestly loves to romanticize anomos. We glorify the rebel, the lone wolf, the idea of living completely free of all rules and restrictions.
We do.
We think lawlessness is the ultimate freedom, right up until someone steals our identity or keys our car, and suddenly we demand swift and absolute justice.
Exactly. We love lawlessness until we are the victims of it. Because animos isn't actually freedom, it's a vacuum.
Right.
The biblical authors treat lawlessness as an existential threat to creation itself, because it's a rejection of the very order that sustains life. The ultimate goal for the believer isn't to escape the rules into some lawless void. The goal is to move from animos into a state of being animos.
Animos, meaning to be in-lawed or completely subject to the law of the Messiah.
Yes.
So moving from animos to enemos isn't about being dragged from a sunny beach and locked inside a damp prison cell of arbitrary rules. Let me try to picture it like this.
Go for it.
Imagine you're floating in the chaotic vacuum of deep space. That is animos. There are absolutely no rules out there. No gravity, no friction, no up, no down.
Nobody is telling you what to do.
Exactly. But you also have no warmth, no oxygen, no direction, and no life. You're just endlessly adrift in the dark.
Sounds miserable.
Right. Now, imagine entering Earth's atmosphere. Suddenly, you are subjected to the intense, unyielding laws of gravity and aerodynamics. That is nomos.
Okay, I see where this is going.
At first, gravity might feel incredibly restrictive compared to the weightlessness of space. You can't just float anymore, you're pulled down. But here is the magic of the atmosphere. Those exact laws of gravity and aerodynamics, the very forces that restrict you, are the only things that give you the friction necessary to build a house, to plant a garden, to walk, and eventually to build an airplane and fly.
Wow.
You absolutely require the strict rules of the atmosphere to experience the true freedom of flight.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. It really reframes the mechanism of grace. We spend so much time viewing God's law as this crushing gravity that we are desperate to escape.
Yeah, we really do.
But stepping from animos into inamos is stepping out of a suffocating, freezing void and into a life-giving atmosphere. The rules of the no-nos aren't there to crush you. They are the aerodynamics of the soul.
I love that. Aerodynamics of the soul.
They are the friction required for spiritual flourishing.
It completely flips the script on how we read these texts. So what does this all mean for you as you digest these ancient blueprints? Let's pull the camera all the way back and look at the whole river.
The big picture.
Yeah. The Triunity of Righteousness reveals a continuous breathing ecosystem that begins and ends entirely with grace. The Father initiates it by revealing his standard of faithfulness, his tzedakah.
Right.
The Son acts as the perfect conduit, accomplishing and securing that standard through his flawless obedience. And the Spirit takes that historical reality and mainlines it into your human will, transforming your desires so that you organically produce the fruit of obedience.
The mechanism is flawless. The exact same gospel that declares you innocent also goes to work sanctifying your heart. The same faith that receives the free gift of salvation simultaneously produces the active walk of obedience.
It rescues the human soul from the cold vacuum of animos and pulls it into the vibrant, life-giving nomos of the Messiah.
Which means we can finally stop treating righteousness like a high score on a moral arcade game.
Yes. It is not a static stamp on your forehead that allows you to remain exactly the same person you were yesterday. It is an invitation to actively participate in a massive relational divine order.
And as we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to really chew on.
What do you have for us?
In our hyper-connected modern world, we have really reduced righteousness to just holding the correct opinions.
Oh, man, that is so true.
We treat it as an intellectual aesthetic. We think that if we broadcast the right political takes or express the socially approved outrage online, we have somehow achieved righteousness.
Like digital tzedakah.
Exactly. But if righteousness is actually what these ancient texts say it is, a covenantal flow, a gritty, active, ongoing pursuit of right relationships, of keeping promises, of producing actual fruit empowered by the Spirit.
Yeah.
How might that fundamentally alter the way you interact with the flawed, difficult people in your own community tomorrow morning?
That is the real challenge, isn't it? You can't just stand on the riverbank analyzing a cup of water forever. Eventually, you have to actually step into the current